A United States Air Force plane arrives in Frankfurt, West Germany, ending one of the most dramatic hijacking and hostage crises the world has seen. Back in the West, among friends at last, the 39 American hostages. They were ordinary airline passengers and crew members returning homewards from work or holiday abroad. During 2.5 weeks, they became the best-known victims of air piracy, highlighting the seemingly insoluble problem of how to ensure safety in the air. The hostage crisis had also been an ordeal for the Reagan administration. Vice President George Bush was sent to Frankfurt to welcome and to praise the hostages.
You endured this cruel and painful experience with courage. Your country is proud of you.
The release of the hostages was greeted with widespread relief, but the affair had not been settled to the entire satisfaction of President Reagan. 7 other Americans are still being held in Lebanon by militant groups, by people he brands as terrorists.
We can be thankful that our faith, courage, and firmness have paid off. But this is no moment for celebration. Let it be clearly understood that the 7 Americans still held captive in Lebanon must be released, along with other innocent hostages from other countries. The United States gives terrorists no rewards and no guarantees. We make no concessions, we make no deals. Nations that harbor terrorists undermine their own stability and endanger their own people. Terrorists, be on notice. We will fight back against you in Lebanon and elsewhere.
The hijackers had demanded the release of over 700 Lebanese Shi'ites held in this prison camp inside Israel. But the American denial of any link between the release of detainees and hostages was maintained by the Israeli Defense Minister, Yitzhak Rabin.
We should bear in mind the American interests, no doubt, when the United States is facing such a problem. But I believe it will be also in the interest of the United States that we should not link whatever we'll decide to do, when to release, in what quantities, numbers, the Lebanese detainees to the release of the American hostages of the TWA plane.
We have promises.
One of the men most closely involved in controlling the hostage crisis was Lebanese Justice Minister and leader of Amal, the Shiite Muslim militia, Nabi Berri.
They said that United States
as far as Berri was concerned, an American government statement in support of peace and security in Lebanon was a sign that the Americans were prepared to talk. And the American government had to take Berri seriously because his mainstream Amal militia, willingly or unwillingly, was to become closely involved with the hijackers and hostages. Just 2 armed men had seized the TWA jet on a flight between Athens and Rome. They flew twice between Beirut and Algiers, releasing groups of passengers, but also killing 1 American hostage with military connections. The killing of a hostage is always a dramatic development in any hijack. It means there's unlikely to be a speedy, peaceful solution. And part of the increase in tension was provided by the American 6th Fleet, cruising off the coast of Lebanon in the Mediterranean. Possibly aboard one of the ship's specially trained commandos who could be used in a direct assault to free the hostages. The whole question of security at Beirut Airport and at other airports around the world was now being re-examined. Lebanon is a country that has endured 2 decades of war and conflict. And despite the ravages of war, the airport never stays closed for long. Thousands of Lebanese have gone abroad to escape the troubles, mainly to other Arab countries, Western Europe and North America, and the exodus is still going on. The shifting balance of power in Lebanon has brought much of West Beirut, including the airport, under the control of Amal. The militia takes its responsibilities seriously, and security and customs controls do exist. But Beirut Airport still has the reputation of being one of the least secure in the world. The whole situation became a confrontation between the American administration and the Lebanese Shi'ites, who form the majority of the Lebanese population, but who have always been the underprivileged in political affairs. So there was widespread popular support for the basic demands of the original hijackers, the release of hundreds of male Shiites, rounded up by the Israelis in their withdrawal from southern Lebanon. The United States, say the Shiites, shares the responsibility for Israel's actions. Another development that alarmed the Americans, the ease with which more Shiite gunmen not involved in the original hijack were able to get aboard the TWA plane at Beirut. Athens Airport now, where security has been stepped up considerably in the wake of the hijack, which started here on June the 14th. Security at Athens was singled out for criticism by the United States. Reagan authorities insist it's well up to modern standards. It's been established that 3 young Shiites with North African passports simply asked if there were any standby seats available on the TWA flight to Rome. 2 of them were accepted, and they passed through security and customs control without any problems. It's possible that they were not carrying their weapons in their hand luggage. The weapons were smuggled onto the aircraft by persons unknown. An airport or airline employee, for example, avoiding their normal checks.
It has something to do with charity, I'm sure.
But many international airline spokesmen agree Athens security had become lax, and it failed to stop the hijack before it began. Just 9 days after the TWA jet was seized and Canada became involved in the problem of safety in the air. Shortly after a Canadian Pacific plane landed at Tokyo, a bomb exploded, killing 2 baggage handlers and injuring 4 others. Meanwhile, an Air India jumbo jet was en route from Montreal and Toronto to London, but it never got there. The plane had plunged out of the sky from a height of 31,000 feet into the Atlantic Ocean, off the Irish coast. All 329 people aboard were killed. It was the worst ever air tragedy over the sea, and the 3rd worst ever crash in the terms of loss of life. Speculation was rife that a terrorist bomb had been placed aboard the aircraft. Rescue vessels of the Irish Navy carried out a thorough search for wreckage and bodies. There was no chance of anyone surviving such a crash. Anything recovered from the plane might help investigators to determine the cause of the crash and, most importantly, whether it was an act of sabotage. The Air India disaster caused much grief and consternation in India, and Indian officials flew to Ireland to take part in the investigations. Their worry was that the crash might have serious political implications. If it was a bomb, it could be the work of Sikh extremists who've been demanding their own state in India. Crowds of distraught relatives gathered at New Delhi Airport. They were hoping against hope that their loved ones had changed their travel plans at the last minute, but still they waited. A jumbo jet was carrying hundreds of Indians back via London to New Delhi and Bombay on family visits and, in some cases, for weddings.
We will come by this flight. When do you think it this plane?
For some of the waiting crowd, the grief was uncontrollable. There were plans by Air India to fly relatives out to Ireland free of charge, but the Irish government advised that visual identification of the bodies would not be possible or advisable. Instead, identification would be done through their clothing, jewellery and dental records. News like this only added to the heartache.
The
There was also
747
alarm and
aircraft lost
despondency in
contact at
Canada,
approximately
where local Air India officials held press
0715
conferences to
GMT,
pass on all the
180
information as it
miles
became
from
available.
Cork in Ireland. The total number
The
of
officials
passengers
also
on
had to
board
face
was
questions about rumours
307,
that the jumbo jet
plus
flight had been
22
delayed
crew
because of
members.
mechanical trouble.
The aircraft was delayed for an hour and a half.
Air India manager in Toronto, Herbert Vanet, was cautious in his response.
Basically, I would prefer to confine my remarks to the press statement. We have no reason to believe that there was any mechanical difficulty in the aircraft.
She was very well accepted, or a very
This man, who
active
settled in
member
Canada,
of the whole
lost
community.
his mother, a
I
retired
know the
doctor.
whole community
She had been
will
going
feel
back to
sorrow
India
about
for
it.
medical treatment.
I request whoever is hearing my sound to pray for her.
A big memorial service was held in City Hall Square, Toronto, for the crash victims. There are 350,000 ethnic Indians living in Canada, making it one of the largest expatriate groups in the world. Most of them are Sikhs, a fact which furthered speculation that Sikh separatists might have planted a bomb aboard the plane, especially in view of the explosion at Tokyo Airport. Sikh political leaders, though, declared that the bombing of an airliner, if indeed it was a bomb, could never be condoned. The investigation into the Air India disaster was made difficult because the main wreckage lies over 1,600 meters below the Atlantic. This makes the recovery of the vital black box flight recorder an almost impossible task. Otherwise, investigators can gather clues on the disaster by studying the post-mortems of the victims. By matching up injuries with seat numbers, for example, they can often determine where and why the aircraft suffered its initial damage. This method's been successful in pinpointing the cause of disasters in the past. One of the additional problems facing airlines concerns packages in the cargo hold. Unaccompanied cargo represents a valuable source of revenue to the airlines, but it is more difficult to control. The explosion at Tokyo Airport, for example, took place in a sealed cargo container. The international aviation authorities do all they can to prevent accidental explosions in the air, warning of the dangers of compressed gas containers, aerosol sprays and matches, for example. This is where the public can help. It's the individual airlines, though, working in conjunction with customs and security services that can discourage the potential hijacker. At Israel's Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, security was so strict that our cameras were not even allowed inside. As an El Al official said, what's the point of special security measures if people know about them in advance? One can be sure, though, that the most thorough checks are made on passengers and luggage, and it's said that there are armed guards on El Al flights. It's because the Israeli airline is such an obvious target for Arab extremists that security is so thorough. At Tokyo's new international airport, though, there's no attempt to hide the security measures, which include armed guards in all key positions. Around the airport perimeter runs a high wire mesh fence, which is electrified and has an alarm system. This makes it virtually impossible for anyone to get onto the tarmac undetected. Airport guards also regularly patrol inside the airport buildings. They're always on the alert for any unaccompanied luggage or parcels. Customs searches are thorough, something that can now be expected at all major airports, with the problem of air safety so much in people's minds. There's a special X-ray area with new equipment to detect any concealed weapons or explosives, and body searches for the passengers. The X-ray machines are fitted with alarms. If the alarm goes off, security staff will move the offending article and then wait for its owner. Even ordinary objects could be used as a weapon to threaten members of an air crew. When an item of luggage has been properly searched, it's given a security sticker. Without one, luggage will not be loaded onto the plane. And there is one last electronic check, completing one of the best security systems in operation anywhere. A couple of days after the release of the American hostages, Israel freed Shiite detainees it had been holding. Israel insisted the events were not related, maintaining that the son, the hijackers and the terrorists, had not succeeded in blackmail. But will other extremists think that air piracy has succeeded, and so be encouraged to make civilian airliners their target sometime in the near future? The American hostages were making their way home, bomb and machine gun attacks damaged American, British and Jordanian airline offices in Madrid, killing 1 person and wounding 28. A Palestinian and a revolutionary Muslim group claimed responsibility. It was a warning, perhaps, that though this hostage crisis was over, airlines are still at risk from terror attacks.
I say it from the bottom of my heart in the name of all the people of our country. Welcome home.
Some words of comfort from President Reagan. He announced new measures to strengthen safety in the air. He's banned the Lebanese airline NEA from landing in the United States on the grounds that it uses Beirut, an insecure airport. And he wants other Western countries to do the same. The Lebanese government says the move is illegal. It says it's already implementing measures to reimpose its own authority there. Beirut Airport was certainly not secure during the TWA hijack, and in spite of Lebanese protests about improvements, it remains an airport that airlines and passengers will want to avoid. The memory of TWA flight number 847 will take a long time to fade, a reminder of the vulnerability of airliners to armed attack. But the anger, the fear, and the publicity roused by this and other recent incidents may at least spur airlines and governments to make it much harder for hijackers to succeed in the future.